Jake Morrison sat on the cold metal floor of the observation deck. The 12-year-old boy pressed his ear against the old radio equipment that his father had left behind. Static filled the air, broken by strange sounds from deep space. He had been doing this every night for 3 months now, ever since the transport ship had forgotten to pick him up from New Haven Colony. The mining colony was supposed to be empty. Most families had left when the ore ran out 2 years ago. But Jake's father had been the station engineer, and someone needed to keep the basic systems running until the corporate cleanup crew arrived. Then his father got sick and died, leaving Jake alone with enough food supplies and a promise that someone would come back for him. That promise was taking a long time to keep. New Haven sat on a small planet in the Kepler 442 system. The planet had one large moon that hung in the sky like a gray eye, always watching. Jake liked the moon. It was the only thing that stayed the same while everything else in his life had changed. Tonight, the radio was picking up something different. Instead of the usual cosmic static, Jake heard what sounded like singing. Not human singing, but something deeper and sadder. The sound made his chest feel tight, like when he thought about his father too much. Jake turned the radio dials, trying to make the signal clearer. The singing got louder. It seemed to be coming from the direction of the moon. He grabbed his father's old binoculars and went to the observation window. The moon looked the same as always, gray and covered with craters. But as Jake watched, he saw something move across its surface. A dark shape too big to be a rock or a machine. The shape moved slowly, like it was hurt or very tired. Jake had heard stories about the aliens who controlled this part of space. They were called Draconians, and they looked like giant lizards. The story said they rode enormous dragons into battle and could destroy whole planets if they wanted to. Most humans stayed far away from Draconian territory, but New Haven was so small and forgotten that maybe the Draconians didn't even know it existed. The singing from the radio got louder. Jake realized it was not coming through space at all. The sound was inside his head, like a voice talking directly to his thoughts. He had never experienced anything like it before, and it scared him. But it also made him curious. Jake made a decision that would change everything. He put on his environment suit and took the small shuttle that his father had used for moon surveys. The shuttle was old, but it still worked. Jake had watched his father pilot it many times, and he had been practicing in secret. The flight to the moon took 2 hours. As he got closer, Jake could see the dark shape more clearly. It was definitely alive, and it was huge. The creature lay sprawled across a crater floor, its wings spread wide like torn sails. Even from a distance, Jake could see scars covering its hide. This was a dragon, a real draconian war dragon. Jake landed the shuttle on a ridge above the crater. His hands shook as he checked his suit seals and oxygen supply. Every smart part of his brain told him to turn around and go home. But the singing in his head had gotten stronger, and now he could hear sadness in it. The dragon was dying alone, and somehow Jake could feel its pain. He climbed down into the crater carefully. The dragon was even bigger up close, at least 60 feet from nose to tail. Its scales were dark red, almost black, and covered with old battle scars. One wing looked broken, and Jake could see deep cuts that had healed badly. The dragon's eyes opened as Jake approached. They were golden like molten metal, and filled with intelligence. The creature raised its massive head and looked at the small human standing before it. Jake waited for the dragon to attack him, or breathe fire, or do whatever dragons did to enemies. Instead, the creature just stared at him with those ancient eyes. The singing in Jake's head changed, becoming less sad and more curious. "Hello," Jake said out loud, feeling foolish. "Are you okay?" The dragon made a sound like distant thunder. Then Jake heard a voice in his mind, speaking words he could understand. "You can hear me, small one." Jake almost fell over in surprise. The voice was deep and tired, but not angry. "Yes," he whispered. "I can hear you." "Impossible," the dragon said. "No alien has ever heard the death song of my people." "What are you?" "I'm human," Jake replied. "My name is Jake Morrison." "What's a death song?" The dragon was quiet for a long moment. "I am Vorthak, once a warrior of the Third Talon. I came to this moon to die with honor, as is our way when age and wounds make us unfit for battle. The death song calls to our ancestors, telling them we are ready to join them." Jake felt a stab of sadness. "You came here to die alone?" "It is the way of warriors," Vorthak said. "But you should not be here, human child. My people would kill you for approaching me." "Why?" Jake asked. "You're hurt. Maybe I can help. Vorthak made a sound that might have been laughter. Help? I'm 700 years old, small Jake Morrison. I have fought in 1,000 battles across 50 star systems. My wounds are beyond healing and my strength is gone. There is no help for old dragons, but Jake was not listening to the words. He was listening to the sadness underneath them. This proud creature had been thrown away when he became inconvenient. Just like Jake had been forgotten on New Haven. They were both unwanted. Both alone. Maybe, Jake said, stepping closer to the great dragon's head. But you don't have to die alone. I can stay with you if you want. Vorthak's golden eyes widened. No one had ever offered to share a dragon's death vigil before, especially not an alien child who should have been terrified of him. Why would you do this thing, Jake Morrison? Jake shrugged. Because nobody should have to be alone when they're scared or hurt? My father taught me that. For the first time in decades, Vorthak felt something other than pain or duty. He felt wonder. The moon continued its slow rotation above them, singing its ancient song to anyone who had the ears to hear it. Tonight, for the first time, it had an audience of two very different souls who understood what it meant to be forgotten by the universe. Jake sat down next to the dragon's great head, and Vorthak did not object. Together, they listened to the music of the spheres and began an unlikely friendship that would shake the foundations of two civilizations. 3 weeks had passed since Jake first met Vorthak on the moon. Every night he took the shuttle from New Haven and spent hours talking with the old dragon. What had started as a death watch had become something neither of them expected. Friendship. Jake brought supplies from the colony's medical bay. He cleaned Vorthak's wounds and brought water from the shuttle's tanks. The dragon was too proud to ask for help, but he did not refuse it when Jake offered. Tell me about the stars, Jake said one night as he sat beside Vorthak's massive head. The dragon's breathing had grown stronger over the past week, though he still claimed to be dying. What do you wish to know, small friend? Vorthak's mental voice was warmer now, less formal than when they first met. How do your people travel between them? The stories say dragons can fly through space without ships. Vorthak's eyes glowed in the moonlight. We do not fly through space as your people think of flying. We swim through it, following the currents that connect all things. Jake frowned. What currents? Listen, Vorthak said. Not with your ears, but with your heart. What do you hear? Jake closed his eyes and tried to focus. At first he heard only the normal sounds, his own breathing, the hum of his suit's life support, the distant rumble of Vorthak's voice. But as he concentrated, other sounds began to emerge. The moon was singing just like the first night. But now Jake could hear layers in the song he had missed before, deep bass notes that seemed to come from the moon's core, higher melodies that danced around the edges, and underneath it all, a rhythm like a massive heartbeat. I hear it, Jake whispered. The moon is singing. Yes, Vorthak said, and Jake could hear approval in the dragon's thoughts. All celestial bodies sing, Jake Morrison. Planets, moons, stars, even the spaces between them. We dragons learned long ago to hear these songs and follow them across the void. Is that how you got here? I followed the sadness in this moon's voice. It called to warriors who had lost their purpose, promising a place to rest forever. But since you have been coming here, the song has changed. Jake opened his eyes. Changed how? Vorthak was quiet for a moment, as if choosing his words carefully. The moon still sings of endings, but now there are notes of beginning as well. Your presence has added harmony to its mourning. This confused Jake. I don't understand. Neither do I, young friend. But I can feel it. When you are near, the cosmic songs become clearer. The pain in my old bones lessens. It is as if your mind somehow amplifies what my people call the star voice. Jake had noticed something similar. When he sat close to Vorthak and really listened, he could hear things that were not there before, distant planets humming like tuning forks, the whisper of solar wind. Sometimes he even thought he could hear other dragons far away among the stars. Vorthak, Jake said slowly. What if you're not dying? What if being here is making you better? The dragon's mental laugh was bitter. Impossible. I am old and broken. My fighting days are over. But your wounds are healing, Jake pointed out. I've been watching them. The cuts on your wing are closing up. You're breathing easier than when I first found you. Vorthak lifted his great head and examined his injured wing. Jake was right. The wing that had been torn and useless 3 weeks ago was now whole. Not perfect, the scars would always remain, but functional. This cannot be, Vorthak murmured. Jake had an idea. Can you show me how to hear the star songs better? I do not know if it is possible. No alien has ever. Please, Jake interrupted. I want to learn. Vorthak studied the boy's eager face. Very well. Place your hand upon my neck just behind my jaw. But be careful. Dragonhide conducts neural energy. The connection may be overwhelming. Jake reached out and pressed his palm against the warm scales of Vorthak's neck. The effect was immediate and incredible. Suddenly, Jake could hear everything. The moon's song became a symphony, with melodies he could not have imagined. But it was more than just the moon. He could hear the planet below them, singing a deep song of metal and stone. The nearby asteroid belt chimed like wind chimes. Even the distant sun added its voice to the cosmic choir. Amazing, Vorthak breathed. Your mind is like a lens focusing the star voice until it becomes clear as spoken words. I have never experienced anything like this. Jake felt dizzy with the rush of sensation. Through their connection, he could sense Vorthak's memories. Centuries of battle. The pride of serving the Draconian Empire. The pain of being cast aside when age made him useless. But he could also feel something else. Hope. For the first time in years, Vorthak felt hope. We have to tell someone about this, Jake said when he finally pulled his hand away. The normal world seemed quiet and gray after the rich symphony he had just experienced. Tell them what? Vorthak asked. That a human child and an exiled dragon have discovered something that breaks every law of my people? Maybe that's exactly what we should tell them, Jake said. Maybe the laws are wrong. Vorthak was about to respond when both of them heard something that made their blood run cold. The high whine of spacecraft engines coming fast toward the moon. 3 ships dropped out of hyperspace above them. 2 were sleek Draconian fighters, their organic curves unmistakable even at a distance. The 3rd was a human patrol vessel, boxy and practical. They have found us, Vorthak said, his mental voice tight with worry. You must go, Jake Morrison. If my people discover you here, Bib, I'm not leaving you, Jake said firmly. You do not understand. To them, you are contaminating a sacred ritual. They will kill you without hesitation. Jake looked up at the approaching ships and made another decision that would change everything. Instead of running, he pressed both hands against Vorthak's neck and opened his mind completely to the star voice. The effect was like lightning. Energy coursed through both of them. Human and dragon linked in a way that had never happened before in the history of either species. The moon's song became so loud and clear that for a moment, Jake thought his head might explode. But through the overwhelming symphony, he heard something else. The ships above them were struggling with some kind of gravitational anomaly. Their engines were fighting against invisible currents that threatened to pull them off course. Without thinking, Jake reached out with his enhanced senses and found the source of the problem. The moon's gravity was fluctuating in ways that made normal navigation impossible, but with Vorthak's knowledge and his own strange ability to hear the cosmic songs, Jake could map a safe path through the turbulence. He projected that path outward, hoping the ships would somehow detect it. They did. All 3 vessels suddenly changed course, following Jake's mental roadmap to a safe landing zone on the far side of the crater. Their engines went quiet and landing lights began to shine in the lunar darkness. What did you just do? Vorthak asked, his voice filled with awe. I think, Jake said, still shaking from the experience. I just saved 3 ships full of people who probably want to kill us. As armed figures began emerging from the landed spacecraft, Jake and Vorthak faced their first real test. They had discovered something that could change everything. But first they had to survive long enough to explain it. The moon continued to sing above them, its ancient voice now joined by 2 newer melodies. One human, one dragon blending together in perfect harmony. The first person to reach them was a human woman in a blue military uniform. She moved carefully across the crater floor, her weapon lowered but ready. Behind her came 2 others, a man in similar uniform and someone in the black armor of a Draconian warrior. Step away from the dragon, son, the woman called out. Her voice was calm but firm. We're here to help you. Jake stood up but did not move away from Vorthak. He's not dangerous. He's hurt. I'm Commander Lisa Hayes of the patrol ship New Frontier, the woman said as she got closer. You must be Jake Morrison. We've been looking for you for weeks. Looking for me? The transport company finally realized they'd left someone behind on New Haven. We came as soon as we got the distress signal. Commander Hayes stopped about 10 feet away, studying the massive dragon. What we didn't expect was to find you having a conversation with a Draconian war beast. The armored figure spoke up, its voice mechanically translated from the Draconian language. The human child has violated sacred law. He must be removed immediately. Vorthak raised his great head and replied in his own tongue, a series of growls and hisses that the translator could not handle. The draconian warrior stepped backward in surprise. What did he say? Commander Hayes asked. Jake looked between the humans and the draconian. Vorthak says the warrior is young and does not understand what has happened here. He says the sacred laws were written before anyone knew what was possible. You can understand their language? The male human asked. He was older than Commander Hayes, with gray hair and kind eyes. I'm Dr. Carlos Ruiz, xenobiologist. How long have you been in contact with this creature? 3 weeks, Jake said. And his name is Vorthak. He's not just a creature. Dr. Ruiz pulled out a handheld scanner and began taking readings. Commander, these energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases. The boy's brainwaves are somehow synchronized with the dragon's bioelectric field. Impossible, the draconian warrior said. No alien mind can touch the star voice. Star voice? Commander Hayes asked. Jake looked at Vorthak, who nodded slightly. It's how dragons navigate through space. They listen to songs that planets and stars make. I can hear them too when I'm connected to Vorthak. Demonstrate, the draconian demanded. Jake hesitated. The warrior's tone was not friendly, and something about his posture reminded Jake of bullies back on New Haven. But before he could respond, alarms began blaring from all 3 ships. Dr. Ruiz checked his scanner frantically. Commander, we have a problem. Long-range sensors are detecting a massive gravitational disturbance approaching this system. It looks like a rogue black hole. How long do we have? Commander Hayes asked. At current speed, maybe 6 hours before it starts affecting local gravity. We need to evacuate immediately. The draconian warrior spoke rapidly into his communicator. After a moment, he turned back to the group. My ship's navigation computer confirms the threat. But our hyperspace drives cannot function safely in this level of gravitational flux. We are trapped. Jake felt Vorthak's mental voice, urgent and worried. The young warrior speaks truth. The gravity storm will make normal navigation impossible. But perhaps, what? Jake asked out loud. If our connection is as strong as it seems, we might be able to guide the ships to safety. The star voice shows safe paths through even the worst cosmic storms. Jake turned to Commander Hayes. Vorthak thinks he can help, but only if we work together. The connection between us lets him navigate better than any computer. Absolutely not, the draconian warrior said. This is blasphemy. I will not trust alien witchcraft with my life. Then you will die here, Vorthak said, his translated words cold and final. Choose quickly, young warrior. Pride or survival. Dr. Ruiz was staring at his scanner in amazement. Commander, the readings I'm getting from their neural link are incredible. The boy's brain is somehow processing spatial information at a rate that should be impossible for humans, and the dragon's bioelectric field is amplifying those calculations exponentially. Can they really guide us out of here? Commander Hayes asked. I don't know, Dr. Ruiz admitted, but our conventional navigation systems will definitely fail in a gravity storm this severe. This might be our only chance. Commander Hayes looked at Jake for a long moment. What do you think, son? Can you do this? Jake was scared. The responsibility was enormous, and he was just a 12-year-old kid who had been talking to a dragon for 3 weeks. But he could feel Vorthak's confidence flowing through their connection, and he remembered how easily they had guided the ships to safety earlier. I think so, Jake said, but everyone has to trust us. If the pilots fight against our directions, it won't work. The draconian warrior was still reluctant, but his communicator crackled with urgent messages from his ship. Finally, he spoke. War Prince Zephrok commands me to accept any solution that preserves life. I will obey. But if this fails... It won't fail, Jake said with more confidence than he felt. The next few hours were the most intense of Jake's life. He sat with his hands pressed against Vorthak's neck, while the old dragon extended his consciousness outward to feel the approaching gravitational chaos. Through their link, Jake could sense the cosmic storm like a massive whirlpool of twisted space-time. But he could also see the safe paths through it. Narrow corridors where the gravity flows created stable channels instead of destructive turbulence. The star voice guided them, singing directions that only their combined minds could interpret. All ships, this is New Frontier, Commander Hayes broadcasted. Follow our lead exactly. No deviations from the flight path, no matter how strange it seems. The 3 ships lifted off together, their engines straining against the increasing gravitational distortion. Jake projected their route through his link with Vorthak, and somehow the dragon was able to transmit those navigation instructions to all three vessels simultaneously. They flew through what looked like empty space, but felt like a maze of invisible walls and currents. Jake's enhanced senses showed him gravity wells that would crush the ships and radiation streams that would fry their electronics. But between these dangers lay a winding path to safety. "Turn 15 degrees starboard," Jake called out, his voice strained with concentration. "There's a gravity eddy coming up that will push us off course." The ships adjusted their heading just as space itself seemed to twist around them. Without Jake and Vorthak's guidance, they would have been pulled into a spiral that led directly into the approaching black hole. For 4 hours they flew this impossible course, threading between cosmic hazards that conventional sensors could not even detect. The draconian warrior stopped questioning their directions after the first hour, when Jake guided them around a gravity spike that would have torn his ship apart. Finally, they reached clear space beyond the storm's influence. The three ships hung motionless among the stars while their crews recovered from the ordeal. "Incredible," Dr. Ruiz whispered, staring at his instruments. "We just navigated through a Class 5 gravitational anomaly, using nothing but biological sensors. The implications are staggering." Commander Hayes was looking at Jake with new respect. "Son, what you and Vorthak just did will change everything. This kind of navigation could open up new shipping routes, make dangerous systems accessible, revolutionize space travel." The draconian warrior approached Jake slowly. This time there was no hostility in his posture. "Human child," he said formally, "you have saved 3 crews today. War Prince Zephrok will want to hear of this personally." Jake was exhausted, but he felt something else too. Pride. For the first time since his father died, he had done something important, something that mattered. Vorthak's mental voice was warm with approval. "Well done, young friend. Today we have shown both our peoples that cooperation is stronger than tradition." But even as they celebrated their success, none of them noticed the small draconian scout ship that had been watching from the edge of the system. Its pilot had recorded everything, and he was already transmitting that data to certain nobles who would not be pleased by what they saw. The harmony between human and dragon had saved lives today, but it had also made powerful enemies who valued the old ways more than progress. War was coming, and Jake and Vorthak had painted targets on themselves without knowing it. 2 weeks after their escape from the gravity storm, Jake thought his life was finally getting better. The human authorities had set up a proper research station on the moon, and Dr. Ruiz was documenting everything about the human-dragon connection. Commander Hayes had recommended Jake for special training as a navigator, and even the draconian war prince Zephrok had sent messages of respect. But Jake should have known that good things never lasted long in his life. The attack came without warning on a Tuesday morning. Jake was in the middle of a training session with Vorthak, learning to interpret the songs of distant nebulae, when the sky above them suddenly filled with ships. 3 draconian battlecruisers dropped out of hyperspace, their hulls painted in the black and gold of the noble houses. Behind them came a swarm of smaller fighters, and riding beneath the largest cruiser were 3 young war dragons, their riders visible in battle saddles. "Get to the bunkers," Commander Hayes shouted over the communication system. All personnel emergency stations now, but Jake did not run. He could feel Vorthak's shock and pain through their connection, and he knew that this attack was about more than territory or politics. This was about destroying what they had built together. "They have come to restore honor," Vorthak said, his mental voice heavy with sadness. "The noble Commander Thirak leads them. He was always opposed to change, always faithful to the old ways." "We have to hide," Jake said, but even as he spoke, he knew it was useless. The research station's defenses were no match for 3 battlecruisers. The first bombardment shook the entire moon. Energy beams carved through the research facility like it was made of paper. The human ships tried to fight back, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. "This way," Vorthak said, struggling to his feet. The old dragon was much stronger than when Jake first found him, but he was still no match for 3 young warriors in their prime. "The crystal caves beneath us will hide our presence and amplify our connection." Jake climbed onto Vorthak's back as the dragon launched himself into the air. It was the first time Jake had ever flown with him, and under different circumstances it would have been the most exciting moment of his life. Instead, he held on tight as weapons fire lit up the sky around them. One of the young dragons spotted them and gave chase, its rider shouting challenges in the draconian language. Vorthak was faster than he looked, but age and old injuries slowed him down. The younger dragon was gaining on them. "Vorthak, behind you," Jake called out. "I know," the old dragon replied grimly. "Hold tight, young friend. This will be rough." Vorthak suddenly folded his wings and dropped like a stone toward the moon's surface. The pursuing dragon overshot them, and for a moment they were safe. But as they dove toward the cave entrance, Jake heard something that made his heart race. The young dragon was screaming, not in anger or battle fury, but in pain and confusion. Through his enhanced connection with Vorthak, Jake could hear the creature's thoughts. The dragon did not want to fight. It was being forced to attack by some kind of control device implanted in its skull. "Vorthak," Jake said urgently. "The other dragons. They're not choosing to fight. Someone is controlling them." "Impossible," Vorthak said, but then he listened more carefully to the star voice around them. "No, you are right. I can hear the dissonance in their songs. They are in pain." They reached the crystal caves just as the pursuing dragon caught up with them. But instead of attacking, the young creature crashed into the cave wall, its rider shouting in frustration as his mount refused to obey commands. The caves were filled with strange mineral formations that seemed to glow with their own light. As soon as Jake and Vorthak entered them, their connection became stronger than ever. The crystals were somehow amplifying their neural link, making the star voice so clear that Jake could hear individual thoughts from the dragons above. All three of the attacking dragons were suffering. Bioneural implants had been forced into their skulls, devices that overrode their natural instincts and turned them into weapons. The riders could force them to attack, but they could not make them happy about it. "We have to help them," Jake said. "How?" Vorthak asked. "Even if we could reach them, the implants are protected by draconian military encryption. It would take..." Jake was not listening to the reasons why it was impossible. He was listening to the pain in the dragons' voices, and he was remembering what it felt like to be alone and abandoned. These creatures were prisoners in their own bodies, forced to hurt people they did not want to hurt. "What if we don't try to break the encryption?" Jake said. "What if we just talk to them directly?" Before Vorthak could object, Jake pressed both hands against the largest crystal formation in the cave. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. His consciousness expanded outward, riding the star voice like a wave, reaching toward the three dragons circling above them. The first contact nearly knocked him unconscious. The young dragon's mind was full of rage and confusion, the bioneural implant sending constant pain signals to keep it obedient. But underneath that artificial torment, Jake found the dragon's true voice. "I hear you," Jake whispered, projecting his thoughts through the crystal network. "I know you don't want to fight." The dragon's mental scream of surprise was so loud that it actually stumbled in flight. Its rider cursed and activated the pain circuits in the implant. But Jake was already moving to the second dragon, then the third. "You are not alone," he told them. "There is another way." Through Vorthak's knowledge and his own strange gift, Jake began teaching the captive dragons something their masters had never expected them to learn. He showed them how to use the star voice not just for navigation, but for communication, how to reach out to other minds across vast distances, how to find harmony even in the middle of chaos. One by one, the three young dragons began to resist their implants, not by fighting the control signals, but by drowning them out with their own song. The pain was still there, but it no longer controlled them. The first dragon broke free while diving toward the cave entrance. Instead of attacking, it landed gently and began speaking directly to Vorthak in the ancient dragon language. Its rider screamed in rage and tried to activate emergency override controls, but the dragon simply ignored him. The second dragon followed, then the third. Soon all three young warriors were standing in the crystal cave, their minds linked to Jake and Vorthak through the star voice. Their riders had been thrown clear and were now prisoners instead of masters. "This is impossible," one of the riders shouted in accented English. "The control implants cannot be overridden." "They weren't overridden," Jake said, exhausted but smiling. They were outsung. Above them, the battle was still raging. The Draconian fleet was attacking the human research station, while Commander Hayes and her people fought desperately to hold them off. But now Jake had an idea that might end the fighting altogether. "Vorthak," he said, "can you teach me to broadcast through the star voice? To reach every dragon and human in this system at the same time?" The old dragon's eyes widened. "That has never been attempted." The power required would be enormous, and the risk to your mind. I have to try, Jake said. People are dying up there because of fear and misunderstanding. If I can show everyone what we've learned here, maybe they'll stop fighting long enough to listen. Vorthak looked at the three young dragons who nodded their massive heads in agreement. Very well, young friend. But we do this together, all of us. Jake placed his hands on the largest crystal while the four dragons formed a circle around him. Together they reached out with their combined consciousness, touching every mind in the battle above. For one perfect moment, every human and draconian in the system heard the same thing. Not words, but understanding. The harmony that was possible when different species chose cooperation over conflict. The strength that came from diversity instead of isolation. The hope that existed when people listened to each other instead of just shouting. The weapons fire stopped. Ships hung motionless in space as crews tried to process what they had just experienced. Even noble Commander Therak, the leader of the attacking fleet, was silent as he struggled to understand what had happened. "This is Commander Hayes to all vessels," came the voice over the communication channels. "I'm calling for an immediate ceasefire. We need to talk." Jake collapsed against the crystal, his mind exhausted from the effort. But through his connection with Vorthak, he could feel something new in the star voice around them. The songs of the dragons were changing, becoming more complex as they learned to harmonize with human thoughts. The rebellion had succeeded, but it was not a rebellion of violence. It was a rebellion of understanding, and it would change both species forever. 6 months after the battle above the moon, Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the exploration ship Harmony as it approached the edge of known space. He was 13 now, officially trained as a navigator and no longer the scared boy who had been forgotten on New Haven Colony. Beside him, Vorthak's mental presence was strong and warm. The old dragon had recovered completely from his injuries, and his scales now gleamed with health. More importantly, he had found a new purpose. Instead of being a weapon of war, he had become a teacher and explorer. "Jump calculations complete," announced Captain Lisa Hayes from the command chair. She had been promoted after her role in establishing the first human-dragon cooperation protocols. "Jake, Vorthak, are you ready?" Jake placed his hand on the neural interface they had built specifically for his partnership with Vorthak. The device amplified their connection without requiring direct physical contact, allowing Jake to work on a starship bridge instead of hiding in crystal caves. Through the interface, Jake felt Vorthak extend his consciousness into the cosmic void ahead of them. Together they listened to the star voice, mapping gravitational currents and cosmic hazards that no conventional sensor could detect. "The path is clear," Jake reported, "but there's something strange about the nebula ahead. The songs coming from it are different." "Different how?" asked Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the ship's xenobiologist. She had replaced Dr. Ruiz when he decided to stay on the moon and continue studying the crystal formations that enhanced human-dragon communication. "More complex," Vorthak said through the ship's translation system, "as if multiple species have passed this way before, leaving traces of their own star voice patterns in the cosmic background." This was exactly what they had hoped to find. The Harmony was the first ship designed specifically for human-dragon exploration teams. Its mission was to map previously unreachable regions of space and search for other intelligent species that might benefit from the cooperation protocols Jake and Vorthak had developed. "Take us in," Captain Hayes ordered. The ship jumped to hyperspace, following the navigation path that Jake and Vorthak plotted together. Through the viewports, stars stretched into lines of light as they traveled faster than any human vessel had ever gone safely. The enhanced navigation made journeys that would have taken weeks possible in hours. When they dropped back into normal space, Jake gasped at what he saw through the bridge windows. The nebula ahead of them was not a natural formation. It was clearly artificial, created by some intelligence that had learned to reshape space itself. Streams of colored gas formed geometric patterns that pulsed with their own light, and at the center of it all was a structure that defied description. "My God," whispered Dr. Rodriguez, "it's a space station." But the size of it, the station was larger than most moons, its surface covered with docking bays and antenna arrays that suggested a massive population. But what caught Jake's attention was not its size. It was the songs coming from it. Through his connection with Vorthak, Jake could hear dozens of different star voice patterns. Each one was unique, suggesting a different species with its own way of interpreting cosmic phenomena. It was like listening to an orchestra where every instrument was playing a different song, but somehow they all harmonized together. "We're receiving a transmission," reported the communications officer. "Multiple languages, but the translation software is having trouble keeping up." "Put it through," Captain Hayes said. The main screen flickered to life, showing a conference room filled with creatures that Jake had never seen before. There were beings that looked like living crystals, others that seemed to be made of pure energy, and some that defied any easy description. But in the center of the group sat two figures that made Jake's heart race with excitement. One was clearly human, a woman with gray hair and kind eyes. The other was a dragon, but not like any draconian dragon Jake had ever seen. This one had silver scales that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. "Welcome, Harmony," said the human woman in perfect English. "We've been waiting for you." "Waiting for us?" Captain Hayes asked in surprise. "We felt your approach through the star voice," explained the silver dragon, its mental voice somehow reaching across space to touch Jake's mind directly. "The harmonic patterns you create together are unlike anything we have encountered before. They sing of cooperation between species that should be enemies." Jake found his voice. "Who are you?" The human woman smiled. "My name is Dr. Amanda Foster. I was part of an exploration mission that disappeared in this region 20 years ago. We encountered beings who had been trying to solve the same problems you and Vorthak have already figured out: how to make different species work together instead of fighting. This station," the silver dragon continued, "is a sanctuary for partnerships like yours. Here, biological and technological beings learn from each other. We call it the confluence." Dr. Rodriguez was scanning the station with every sensor the ship had. "Captain, I'm reading life signs from at least 30 different species. Some are carbon-based like humans, others are silicon-based, energy-based, even some that seem to exist partially in subspace. How is that possible?" Captain Hayes asked. Dr. Foster laughed. "The same way a human boy can form a neural link with a draconian war dragon. When you stop assuming that differences make cooperation impossible, you discover that diversity actually makes it stronger." Over the next several hours, Jake and Vorthak learned about the community that had grown up around the confluence. Species that had been enemies for centuries had found ways to work together by sharing their unique abilities. The crystal beings could process information at incredible speeds, while the energy creatures could manipulate subspace directly. Dragons from dozens of different worlds brought their mastery of the star voice, while various humanoid species contributed their adaptability and creativity. "But what do you actually do here?" Jake asked during a virtual tour of the station. "We explore," said the silver dragon, whose name was Nexus. "Not just space, but the connections between all living things. We map the patterns that link consciousness across the galaxy. We search for other species who might benefit from what we have learned. And we prepare," added Dr. Foster seriously. "There are forces in this galaxy that believe cooperation makes species weak. They think that only through conquest and domination can true strength be achieved. We've been gathering allies for the day when that philosophy threatens everything we've built." Jake felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's climate control. "Forces like what?" "Ancient machine intelligences that seek to convert all biological life into digital patterns," Nexus explained. "Hive minds that absorb other species into their collective consciousness. Beings of pure entropy that want to return the universe to chaos. The good news," Dr. Foster said, "is that you and Vorthak have proven something we've believed for years. When different species truly cooperate, they become stronger than the sum of their parts. Your harmonic navigation technique has already inspired 3 other human-dragon partnerships in draconian space." Captain Hayes looked thoughtful. "You're asking us to join this alliance?" "We're asking you to help us grow it," Nexus said. "Take what you've learned back to your people. Show them that the universe is bigger and more wonderful than they imagine. Help other species discover their own versions of the harmony you've created." Jake looked at Vorthak through their neural link, feeling the old dragon's excitement and determination. They had started as 2 unwanted souls finding comfort in each other's loneliness. Now they were being offered the chance to help reshape the galaxy. "What do you think?" Jake asked his friend. "I think," Vorthak replied, "that this is what we were meant to find all along. Not just friendship, but purpose." Jake turned to Captain Hayes. "We want to do this. Both of us," the captain smiled. "Then I guess we have a new mission. Dr. Rodriguez, start preparing detailed reports on everything we've seen here. Communications, send a message to Earth and Draconia. Tell them we've made contact with something that will change everything." As the Harmony prepared to return home with news of the confluence, Jake stood at the observation deck and listened to the star voice around them. The songs were more complex now, layered with harmonies from dozens of species who had learned to sing together. Somewhere in those cosmic melodies, he could hear the voice of a small moon orbiting New Haven, still singing its ancient song, but now it was not alone. Its voice had joined a choir that spanned the galaxy, proving that even the most forgotten and unwanted could find their place in the vast symphony of existence. Jake pressed his hand against the neural interface and felt Vorthak's contentment flowing through their bond. They had found more than friendship among the stars. They had found family, purpose, and hope for a future where being different was not a weakness to overcome, but a strength to celebrate. The universe was vast and full of wonders, and they had only just begun to explore them together. Behind them, the Confluence Station continued its ancient work, gathering lost souls and teaching them to sing in harmony. And ahead of them, the galaxy waited to learn the song that a human boy and an unwanted dragon had discovered in the loneliness of a forgotten moon. The harmony would spread, one voice at a time, until even the darkest,